Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So, Homath is now really kind of leaning towards just laying it all hang out concerning his white ethno-nationalism. Okay? So he writes here, access to white people is not a right. Now, he could capitalize that A and add a period at the end, but he's getting quite sloppy. He didn't really think this post through. He didn't even have time to make it look presentable. But he writes here this very strange stance, because it assumes that wherever there's whites, there is no evil. And I find that to be quite abhorrent, because when you look at Ukrainians and Russians, they're pale. If you saw them walking, most of the time you couldn't tell they're Russian. Some Slavs, you can see they have high cheekbones, and they look like that Russian fighter in the movie Rocky who faces against Sylvester Stallone. And you can assume, well, yeah, that's a Russian. Like Vladimir Putin looks Russian. You can see there. But if you were just to see someone like Zelensky walking around, you would just think as your typical white guy from Portland, Oregon, or Washington, D.C. You wouldn't really think too much about him. And so, isn't it strange how the Ukrainians and the Russians, they're going at it. They are not really doing a whole good job with peace and getting along. And you notice how their skin pigmentation is not what they lead with. They're not saying to each other, well, we're all pale, so therefore we have the same moral creed and we want the same things. No, that's not really the case now, is it? If you just on a very ignorant level think, well, because in some communities there's more wealth, that means that it has something to do with the race and not the existential value system. See, what makes a community wealthy, it's not really their race, but rather their values. And that's something that I think Islam teaches quite well. But at the end of the day, as a Muslim, we know that some people are going to be given more wealth than others. And you'll be judged for how you use your wealth. And wealth or lack of wealth is a test and trial. So, if you see the fitna of people who have wealth and how they squander it, you'll also notice that individuals like Aiden Ross, for example, he's Jewish, but he's pale, right? So there's a whole conversation around, are Jews white or not? But when you look at Aiden Ross, he's got cash. He lost, what was it, 200,000 gambling? And he's quite degenerate and weird. He's got a large audience. I mean, Andrew Tate got up from his chair and Aiden Ross smelled where his butt was and balls were. It was very vulgar. So, if you just look at Aiden Ross, he's been given wealth and status at a young age, and he wastes his money and he degrades his honor and brings a lot of shame to his family, I'd argue. But he's popular for that. So, he's been given wealth and status, and what has he done with it? How is he using it? And on Judgment Day, he'll be held accountable for all of that. And he's also a disbeliever, so there's that. Point is, when you have someone like Homath framing wealth and decency as exclusive to white people, and that blacks and browns and Asians are all just fighting to be around whites, it's really quite strange and puts a very eugenic spin on his whole philosophy, right? So, access to white people is not a right. Huh. But has he ever made a comment about colonialism? I know that gets overused by liberals, but I think we often forget how that has played a role throughout history. No matter who's doing it, countries change through immigration, economic failures, natural disasters. Just think about the wealth of Egypt and think further about how Joseph was able to interpret those dreams for Pharaoh. And you think about how scary it was for people to go through droughts or even earthquakes, right? You have these wonderful buildings, all of a sudden everything's gone. If you think of Pompeii, 1 minute they're all living their lives. Unfortunately, there was quite a lot of brothels there. The volcano erupts and everyone's in ash. Then they're gone. They're wiped out. So, wealth changes hands, it accumulates in different spots. But it's foolish of us to think that the only type of people who have wealth and are good and who are easy to be around are whites. It's really easy to fall for these racial dynamics, but whenever I'm feeling like a stereotype is getting out of control, I think of my favorite comedians, and I think of how they made me laugh, and that it's not all of them, that stereotypes can be fun, but they can also be a tool used by Shaitan to divide the people, and especially to divide the Ummah. And so you have to be cautious and say, not all of them. So, this guy gets mad at Islam. He gets mad at dumb hoes. And now he's assuming that white people are so special that he has to say something strange like this. Now, I'm mixed race. I'm Italian and Cherokee. My siblings are mixed race. My children are mixed race. I don't have any value for racial supremacy. I just don't. And you can't really convince me about it. In some places, it's your tribe that matters. And others, it's more about how long you've been in a certain place. How far back does your family go? Each culture has ways in which they measure each other's value. Us as believers, we can look at each other and say, how much have you learned from the Quran? How much have you learned from the Deen? Important things like that. But valuing someone just because of their lineage or how many cars they have is absurd. And so skin shade is not a value in Islam. And I do find it odd that he is really just saying the quiet part out loud. And this is also a sign that the new right in America has a white identitarianism there. And it's getting quite clear that in order to be popular amongst the right, you need to start taking the Groyper model. And even someone who wants to stay relevant, like Myron Gaines, he slanders his own race for the appeasement of white nationalists who will hate him no matter what. Man, there's this sparkling water called Gerolsteiner. It's a natural mineral water. It's pretty good. In case you like sparkling waters, I'm drinking it. It's absolutely wonderful. But it's important for us believers to remember that we are not to have this type of racial stigma on us, put there by others, nor do we put racial crap on others who had no choice in what their parents decided to do. Very strange. Let me know what you think. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, join the blog.